whatever.
Alrighty, welcome back.
And we're back.
I know it's an exciting round. I was like, nothing's changed for you guys. It's like a week later or whatever, but we're just sitting down. And
We have washed our clothes since then. We're just wearing the same outfits.
I didn't even restart the timer. What is wrong with me? How do you work this thing? Technical difficulties. But please, Shae, tell them what was the problem with the book.
So, yeah, there are some things that work really well as any kind of written material or book or whatever that, or, online, blog kind of stuff too, that don't necessarily work so much as an audio book or podcast kind of experience. One of those things is there are things you can kind of leave out, like he said and she said and stuff like that when you're writing a book that it's easy for you to like bounce around with your eyes and kind of deduce, who's speaking. If you left a bunch of he saids and she saids in there, that would just be like really tedious to read. Mm-hmm. But when you're hearing that in an audiobook and you don't have the ability to skim back and forth, if you zone out like most of us do at least a little bit when we read, and have to go back and reread stuff, it's easy to lose track of like where you are in space time, mm-hmm. and who's speaking. So
so if you had a chance to read the book, if you had a chance, if not, you can go to smashwords.com and download that here. Download that. I'll put a link in the description below. It's one kind of seamless thing. There's no chapters in it whatsoever, and that was kind of the biggest challenge when it came to the audiobook, is figuring out where the breaks or where the smart breaks are so that we weren't just randomly leaving anybody on a cliffhanger. So while I was going through and finding the smart breaks, it came out to be like 10 chapters?
Yeah, about 10 chapters.
Yeah, I broke it down into 10 chapters, and in the process of that, I noticed something interesting. I completely forgot how I ended the book. I hadn't read it since 2013, which is when I released it, so I completely forgot what I was trying to do, and I didn't save all my notes on where I was going to go with this series. So rereading that in the process of breaking up the chapters was kind of mind-blowing. And the end result was I had to go back entirely and rewrite whole sections of the second novella. So yes, there is one. I don't know when I'm going to get it out soon, but stay tuned for more news on that. In the meantime, Shae's been super awesome, and he's the one that came up with the idea for putting in audio cues and breaks, and helping the readers kind of keep up with what's going on.
Yeah, breaking it into, like, having kind of manageable chunks and sounds to kind of cue you in on mm-hmm. where you are. We're getting into third video territory if we want to.
I know, we just sat down.
Split this and...
Yeah, so we're kind of excited about where we're going to go with this. I haven't heard all of the music yet or any of the voices that he does, but I heard a lot of the first chapter. We have that pretty much done. It's got the A-OK, if you didn't know.
Sweet.
There's a stamp of approval.
I like a thumbs up.
So it's looking pretty awesome. We were bouncing around with the idea on releasing them as each episode comes out on my Patreon page, but I think it might just be better if we just release everything in one go. It makes it easier for me to post on Smashwords or some other platform if I want to go that way. So we'll kind of keep you up to date on where we're going with the audiobook, and I think, Shae, we're going to go ahead and go into our third video.
Okay.
But first.
I guess that was another thing that I probably should have mentioned is, which you can just edit in anywhere. One of the other reasons it makes sense to kind of break it up into chunks for the audiobook is, unlike like a book where you can remember what page you're on, if you're listening to this in the car or something and lose track of where you are, it's a lot harder to scroll through 3 hours of audio to figure out where you were than if it's just like broken into like 10 chunks of audio. It's a lot easier to find your place.
Yeah. Some chapters, and because of the way the book was written, some chapters were longer than others, just because of how it breaks up. And that's just kind of how the cookie crumbles. So tell them, Shae, where can they find you?
You can find me in a lot of places. I'm all over random parts of the internet. I'm on Instagram and Twitter. Instagram, I think I'm just Daniel Shae, and Shae is spelled weird, S-H-A-E, which I guess is the unusual spelling. Daniel Shae. My Twitter is Daniel Shae Music. You can go to my website, danielshae.co. which links to any of my other pages. If you're more businessy, I'm pretty sure I'm on LinkedIn. You can find me.
Either way, I'll put it down in the description below. See you in the next one.
Terror incident, report 001.
This place had once been a city, with roads and tall concrete buildings. People ambled along the sidewalks as cars sped through busy intersections. Neon signs beckoned visitors to shops while street performers danced and sang for spare change. Now, the city is a shell, abandoned by mankind and left to wither. Without humans to keep nature at bay, tall grass broke through the seams of once carefully crafted roads and sidewalks. Trees grew from beneath the rubble and wild vines snaked around power lines. A woman stood alone at the edge of the ramp of her hovering craft, watching as various grazing animals moved through the green-covered streets. Below her stretched the long, cracked roof of a building. "Are you sure we're at the right place?" a robotic voice asked from behind her. She glanced over her shoulder briefly before looking down at her drop point.